How's it going, guys? It is Glake back yet again with finally more continuation of the completion process. We've got another very long reading for you today. Again, I'm kind of getting around to doing these when I finally have time to do them. I am off stream duty for a little bit on my other channels this week, so yeah, I'll definitely have time to knock out at least a couple readings this week and hopefully get a little bit closer to the final chapters of these books. Today we're going to be doing steps 14 through 18, which is chapter 8 of the completion process. So again, pretty long reading here. Take in what you can. This is available in video format, obviously, so you can go back and go through the steps individually if you feel the need to do so, but we're going to jump right into it. So steps 14 through 18, completion and closing, chapter 8. All life naturally flows in the direction of healing. To heal is to come back into a state of wholeness. Trauma creates fractures within the self. In order to become whole once more, the parts of us that are essentially stuck in time and only able to communicate with us through triggers must be retrieved. We must bring those aspects of ourselves from the past into the present so that the totality of our consciousness and the totality of our self are available to us. By intentionally integrating these fractured aspects of the self, we become whole. These last 5 steps in the process are described in detail in this chapter, explaining how to wrap up the process and return once again to conscious perspective. Step 14. Enter safe haven and deactivate the memory. In this step, we enter the safe haven with the child. As we proceed to enter, we use the secret entrance as well as our secret wave or phrase. We imagine the entrance closing behind us, separating us from the memory that we have just come out of. This creates a sense of safety but also distance from the memory, which is healing. The feeling we want to give the child when he comes to the safe haven is that it's all over, meaning the pain is over. We want to convey this in whatever way feels best. So you can say it's like heaven, or tell him this place is a new place and it will be a new life of his choosing. All of his experiences will feel good to him from here on out. Sometimes you will encounter a memory where your child self is an embryo or a baby in utero. Did I say that right? I think it's utero, isn't it? When this is the child self, when this is the case, you can keep the baby in the uterus and bring your mother with you inside her to the safe haven, or you can put your baby self in a new womb, either a safe womb-like structure or a womb inside your ideal mother, and bring the baby self into the safe haven inside the womb or with the new mother. The most important part about this step as we enter the safe haven itself is to make sure the memory that the child was taken out of is properly closed. You can do this by shrinking into nothingness, burning it like a piece of paper, or popping it like a balloon. When we shrink, burn, or pop a memory, we are consciously deciding to make the memory inactive. We imagine that we are looking back at the memory we just came from, as if we are watching it play out on a screen or inside a bubble. If the memory will not shrink, burn, or pop, it means that there may still be unresolved aspects of it. For example, we may have other fractured aspects of the self in the memory, or our being may want us to know something else about the memory for the sake of our understanding or healing, which could not happen unless we gain more details. If the memory will not shrink, burn, or pop, you have 2 options. The first is to progress forward and leave the memory open. The second is to leave the child self that took you out of the memory with your safe support figure in the safe haven and go back to the memory by yourself in order to learn more from the memory or to help more childhood aspects. Make your choice based on which option feels the best to you at the time. If you choose to go back into the memory to recover other child aspects, repeat the previous steps of the completion process with each of those aspects and bring them to the safe haven. Simply be aware that you will therefore be working with multiple children instead of just one. Don't worry about resolving everything. Your being wants integration, and so no child will be left behind. If you don't integrate a certain child aspect today, he or she will be integrated at another point. Step 15. Create purification and healing. Once you've re-entered the safe haven, the child is placed in the water and bathed as a purifying and healing ritual. The child drinks the water as well. This symbolically ends the previous life in the memory so that the child can begin a new life here in the safe haven. In addition to purifying and healing, water also signifies the birth into a new phase of life, which is why it's so often used in baptisms. Sometimes the child self we bring to the safe haven has injuries. This water heals those injuries, creates even more distance from the memory, and helps with closure. The healing water symbolically says, it's all over now. This is a new life. You are living here in this place where you will never want anything and you will never hurt again. This bathing and healing are symbolic steps that help us bring the child into a new state, one that feels so much better for him or her. These symbolic steps help the mind and emotional self heal. Having access to water with magical properties also gives us the power to control our safe haven and our healing process. Imagine how nice life would be if we had a cure-all available to us whenever needed. This step helps put the pain of the aftermath of the memory to rest. Step 16. Meet the child's needs within the safe haven. During this step, the final needs of the child self are met before we return our consciousness to real time. We meet those needs within the context of the safe haven. Our child self may want to eat a specific food. Our child self may want a permanent playmate or pet, such as a unicorn. Our child self may want to lie down and go to sleep with a stuffed toy, or our child self may just want to be held by us while we are in the safe haven together. Whatever the child self needs or wants, we provide him or her so that the child feels better. This brings the feeling state of the completion process to a resolution. This feeling is our indication that we're no longer mentally or emotionally stuck in the past. Step 17. Option to stay or merge. At this point, the child is given the choice to stay in the safe haven or to rejoin and merge with you as the adult perspective. If the child chooses to stay, lovingly embrace and support that choice. If the child self should never be forced to do anything she doesn't want to do. Sometimes the most healing thing for the child is to stay in the safe haven and to be allowed to experience a reality in which she doesn't suffer and in which all her needs are met. Think of this as experiencing heaven. Very often, after experiencing healing, the child chooses to merge and agrees to join you in the now. In this case, we imagine the child merging with our adult perspective and becoming part of us, as if a puzzle piece is going back into place. This is very much like a stream rejoining the river it had branched off from. When this happens, the child self, in essence, grows up. During this step, it's common to feel the child self fast-forwarding through development to become the age we are now as he or she joins us. This step is the highest level of integration. I worry about saying that because I don't want people to make this step their ultimate goal. If we have a goal like this in mind, when we are starting the completion process, we cannot be present with and accepting what is in front of us. We will be thinking more of our goal than about what our child self really needs. You don't want to try to force your inner child to integrate with you when your inner child might actually have other needs. Put your child first. Sometimes it may feel to us as if the emotion is not altered or improved when we teach this step in the completion process. If this is the case, it's a good idea to use the memory beneath a memory technique, which was discussed in step 6, to see if the emotion is still present within the child might. To see if the emotion that is still present within the child might, in fact, stem from an even earlier memory. How to deal with blending. If no earlier memory presents itself, and we still feel no improvement to our negative emotions, it may be that we have blended with the inner child rather than merged. Blending happens when a traumatic memory is unresolved and the missing aspect of our consciousness that experienced the trauma is coexisting with our own. Blending is very different from merging. Think of it as two radio channels trying to come through at the same time. Distortion and interference occurs. This is common when a memory is traumatic enough that your consciousness wishes to first re-experience the memory from a third-person perspective to maintain distance from it. For anyone concerned about blending, there is a solution. We may wish to add a large mesh net to the safe haven and then imagine walking through the net. The net will move through us and catch any inner child that we are partially and unconsciously blended with. We can then collect the child in our arms and ask the child if he or she needs to show us a memory. If the child says yes, we let the child lead us to a memory and we progress to the part of the completion process once again, starting with step 5. Remember, it's up to us whether we feel ready to experience the memory in first-person perspective after witnessing it in third-person perspective. If not, we can simply remain our adult self through the duration of the process. If so, we can choose to merge into the first-person perspective and experience the memory before removing our consciousness from the child's perspective, then go back to the adult perspective and proceed with the remainder of the completion process. If the child says no to needing to show us a memory, we progress through the completion process starting at step 13. But adding emotional understanding and validation to the process of helping the child move forward to a space where integration can occur. Sometimes with emotions like grief, no earlier memory actually exists. It's simply that the emotion needs to be allowed to be felt and then processed by your adult self in the now. When this is the case, the inner child will usually want to be held within the safe haven and have your loving presence while he or she simply feels the way he or she feels, or the child will be in a positive state, but you will return to real-time consciousness and have the feeling still present with you. In this case, the emotion needs to be processed and integrated slowly. Instead of feeling like something has gone wrong, remind yourself that to rush the process is to disapprove of it. It can be profoundly healing and integrating to give the emotion permission to stay if that's what it needs. This can lead to integration in and of itself. Let your being readjust to the aspects of yourself that you have recognized as well as the sometimes difficult realizations that might come with it. This process is a bit like reattaching a severed limb. Some reattachment surgeries will be easier and quicker than others, and there is always a period of readjustment to what has been recovered. Even if the child decides to stay in the safe haven, we have integrated a huge amount of the consciousness associated with that split-off self. We have also altered the vibration of the split-off self and, thus, the causation. Improving the vibration of the split-off self in any way alters our overall vibration. This makes us a match to improved experiences. Part of ourselves is now in the vibration of having our needs met. Keep in mind that we may wish at some point in the distant future to come back and fully integrate with these aspects that chose to remain in the safe haven. Step 18. Return to conscious perspective. We exit the safe haven, taking a few deep breaths as we bring our consciousness back to our perspective in real time. We take time to gently acclimate to our surroundings and the new level of integration and presence that we feel. We need to be present with the way we feel when we come out of the process. Our body needs to process the integration that just occurred. It's crucial that whenever we do the completion process, we give our whole being time to adjust and to process what has just occurred. As mentioned previously, the completion process is akin to mental and emotional surgery, so we need to be calm. We need to help ourselves gently acclimate to the new state. It's very beneficial during this phase to allow your body to gently move however it wishes to move, slowly rocking back and forth and introducing natural movement to your hips and back are especially beneficial when you undergo a change in your system. Also, if you let yourself be completely present with the way you feel as a result of the completion process, you further integrate that new state of being. When we come back to full consciousness after the completion process, usually everything feels different. It will feel as if you are experiencing the now for the very first time. Everything feels more real. Your physical environment looks much sharper or crisper. You begin to feel like you are really here. You feel raw, but being raw and being here is okay. You experience the now as a nice place which is calmer and more peaceful. There is no hurry or rush. You may even feel as if your beliefs or troubling thoughts are suspended. Though this may be disorienting, you will feel a brand new kind of clarity. Amazing insights and new levels of self-awareness that were previously beyond our reach may come at this time. We may feel the need to mentally process what just happened. We may feel the need to share our insights and knowledge. When our consciousness originally split, that particular part of our split off self-possessed knowledge, understanding, and perspective. When our consciousness rejoined us, we regained all of that knowledge, understanding, and perspective. To stick with the analogy of the river, when the flow of water broke off into its own stream, it took information with it. When that stream rejoins the main river, that information is now available to the river once more. This is why so much awareness returns each time we practice the completion process. We may benefit from listening to soothing music or smelling essential oils at this time. We may also benefit from sitting in a calm place until we are ready to continue with our day. I also encourage people to write about the experience. When our mind can wrap itself around what just occurred, we become even more conscious of ourselves and the world we live in. Making sure I don't skip a page here. Watching for physical changes. Let me get a sip of my tea, actually. I need a little bit more caffeine. Physical changes occur naturally as a result of your vibration being altered by the completion process. Many aspects of your life are a result of painful past experiences. When you go back in time and change the causation, it naturally alters aspects of your current life. For example, you may have experienced your father as chronically unavailable, so in your adult life you attract unavailable men as the reflection of that wound. If you go back into the memories where your dad was unavailable and allow yourself to heal within the memory, you might find that you are no longer attracted to unavailable men. Or you might decide to leave your husband, who is emotionally unavailable, or you might find ways to meet your own emotional needs. Physical changes to our lives also naturally follow suit when we make mental and emotional changes. We will make different choices, we will do different things, we will attract different people, and we will not have the same reactions we had before. Allow these physical changes from your integration to occur in the hours, days, weeks, and months that follow. Anything you accomplish while engaging in the completion process serves to improve your overall vibration. Improving your vibration, even a little bit, improves what you are a match to experiencing in your conscious life. Even if we have not yet achieved full integration, we have still increased our vibration. As long as our intention is to use this process to heal and integrate, we can't mess it up or fail at the completion process. There is no need to force your being to become whole any more than you have to force a cut on your hand to heal. Integration is a natural process, and all forces in the universe are on your side, working with or without your compliance. So take a deep breath and know with certainty you aren't going to get this wrong. In closing this section, I ask you to think about this reintegration process as if climbing Mount Everest. You can reach the top. If you stop at the base camp during one experience with the completion process, you will be taken back to the base camp the next time so you can try again to reach the summit. The view from the summit is so ineffably beautiful. My advice is to keep integrating because the view is worth it, and so are you. If nothing ever works to help you feel better, including the completion process, these are like some additional notes added within the chapter. Do me a favor. Close your eyes for a few minutes, think back to your childhood, and try to remember some times when you were happy or excited or sad or afraid. Sad or mad or afraid. How did the people around you react? Which emotions did they consider good and therefore acceptable? Which emotions did they consider bad and therefore unacceptable? Which ones were you allowed to express, and which ones were you expected to suppress? Now try to remember times when the people around you felt strong emotions. How were they treated by others? How did they deal with having those emotions? How were emotions dealt with in the family, culture, or society in which you grew up? What were you directly told or indirectly taught was the best way to handle your emotions? An emotional control strategy is any behavior that is done specifically to control or regulate the way you feel. For example, drinking alcohol, going for a walk, playing a video game, writing affirmations, or binge eating are all emotional control strategies. What emotional control strategies did the people around you use or teach you to use when you were growing up? Keep in mind that the more the adults in your life felt the need to maintain control over how they felt, and therefore maintain control over how you felt, the more resistant they were to all emotions, both good and bad. Now look at your life today. What ideas or control strategies are you still using that are a perfect reflection of the way you were consciously or subconsciously programmed to deal with emotion growing up? Based on your past, what did you decide was the meaning of that anger or sadness or fear? It is tempting to think of it as an objective truth that certain emotions are bad and certain emotions are good based on the level of discomfort we feel. But what we must realize is that our judgment about the goodness or badness of an emotion has to do entirely with how we are socialized. It is possible for us to be taught that an emotion such as excitement is bad because it will lead to disappointment, or an emotion such as sadness is good because we have been raised in a culture that sees sadness as beautiful or indicative of real love. The way we have been socialized to see specific emotions determines our relationship to them and thus our overall experience of them. It is normal to want to feel good. The basic survival instinct is to shy away from the pain and move toward pleasure. This is not in and of itself a problem. This instinct does not inherently cause suffering. Suffering is caused when, instead of going toward pleasure, we resist the pain. And this is what we have done with emotion. I want you to imagine that in the back of your head there's a control switch, like a light switch on a wall, except instead of light and dark, this control switch controls good and bad. The switch is designed to be triggered whenever you encounter something that you have judged as bad. If you register something as bad, you register it as a threat. So when this switch goes on because it thinks you are encountering something bad, your body responds to that threat by going into fight or flight mode. You try to either escape from fight with that thing, You try to either escape from or fight with that thing. Escaping from something and or fighting with something is nothing more than an attempt to control that thing. Control yourself or control the course of events. The thoughts we think about the emotion we are having cause us to immediately add emotion to emotion, and this is like adding kerosene to a fire that is already blazing. No matter what we do to feel better, nothing works. For example, let's say growing up, when you express anxiety, your parent turned to you in an exasperated manner and said, "Stop being such a fraidy cat. There is no reason to act like this. Come on now." You would have gotten the message that anxiety is bad, and what's worse, that if you feel it, there must be something wrong with you. In the future, if you feel anxious, your control switch will turn on because you have been conditioned to see anxiety as bad. You'll start to fear yourself because you'll feel like something is wrong with you for feeling anxiety, and therefore you will feel anxious about feeling anxious. This is the way panic disorders develop. The way to know that your emotional control switch has turned on is that you will start to feel bad about feeling bad or feel bad about feeling good. For example, you'll feel angry about feeling depressed, or anxious about feeling anxious, or guilty for feeling happy, or afraid about feeling anger, or sad about feeling depressed. This is sometimes called a secondary emotion. You will also immediately revert to all the emotional control strategies that are linked to that control switch, such as drinking alcohol, reading a book, exercising, eating, shooting up heroin, distracting yourself, obsessively writing affirmations, positively focusing, or arguing with and contradicting your negative thoughts, all of which are attempts to make the emotion go away because you have judged it as bad. This is the reason that you can't use positive focus to get rid of negative emotions. Whatever we resist persists. The resistance of the emotion is, in fact, what causes a downward spiral. Our emotions work like quicksand, where if we struggle against them, we end up drowning. If you continue to find that nothing ever works to help you feel better no matter how hard you try, it is because you are approaching your life from that very angle. The angle that you must feel better because whatever you are feeling is not okay. You're approaching the way you feel from the angle of, this is bad, and so it has to change. Have you begun to think thoughts like, what have I done to deserve this? Or, what is wrong with me? Or, I wish I didn't feel like this, or I can't handle this, or why am I like this? Or the very worst, I shouldn't feel like this. Sometimes people will try the completion process and report that it doesn't work to help them feel better. They struggle with the process and it doesn't bring about resolution. The reason for this is that they are too resistant to their emotions and they cannot access the emotion that lies beneath their secondary emotion. Earlier in the book we discussed cover emotions. I explained that cover emotions function exactly like ice on the surface of a deep lake. In the same way that the ice covers the water, a cover emotion exists to cover another emotion below it. Ice on a lake prevents you from falling through and into the water, and in the same way, the cover emotion prevents you from sinking into and feeling the emotion that it is designed to cover. Cover emotions exist to keep us out of lower vibrational states. They are natural defense mechanisms within the emotional body. Obviously, if we subconsciously or consciously see an emotion as bad, we will want to keep out of it. For this reason, a secondary emotion, an emotion about feeling an emotion, works just like a cover emotion does. Sometimes when we are completely present with a cover emotion, we drop into the even deeper level of emotion it covers. It's a bit like an emotional version of falling through the ice into a deep water below. However, this doesn't always work. We spend what seems like an eternity grappling with the secondary emotion to no avail. When this is the case, the secondary emotion itself is the one to which we need to apply the entire completion process. Instead of asking ourselves, when was the first time I felt this way? We need to ask ourselves, when was the first time I learned it wasn't okay to feel this emotion? Sometimes the secondary emotion we feel, the emotion that is the byproduct of our resistance to feeling the way we feel, is the reflection of trauma that needs to be resolved. The trauma that was experienced when we learned it wasn't okay to feel a certain emotion. If we apply the completion process to this emotion, we can resolve our resistance to the emotion so that we can actually succeed with the completion process relative to our deeper emotional trauma. I met with a client named Annie. I think it's pronounced Anne, but I'm not sure it has an E at the end. Who was struggling on a daily basis with the completion process. According to Anne, she would sit with an emotion for hours and see no improvement. When I walked her through the process, we discovered that the reason it wasn't working for her was that the minute she would feel an emotion such as anger, her emotional control switch would come on and she would feel intense anxiety about feeling the emotion. That anxiety would never allow her to drop down into the feeling. Instead of trying to get past that anxiety, we simply applied the completion process to that anxiety about feeling anger. The memory that came up for resolution was from when she was a toddler and angry at her sister. She pushed her sister away as a result of that anger. Her mother shamed her and put her in a timeout. At that age, this experience was traumatic enough that she decided anger was not okay. The feeling of anger in her adult life essentially became the trigger for this traumatic memory. As a result of feeling anger, she would relive the anxiety of being shamed and separated from her family as punishment. At first, her adult self could not tell her child self that feeling anger was okay. She had to bring the image of me into the memory with her and see me telling both her adult self and her child self that it was okay to be angry. She had me enable her inner child in this memory to smash plates and scream, and she had me lecture her mother about dealing with her children's anger. Essentially, by dealing with that memory, we made it okay for her to feel anger. What Anne found was that after resolving the trauma about feeling anger, she can now drop into her anger when she felt it in her adult life, and create resolution for the trauma linked to it. The completion process began to work for her. What's more, she realized that the reason nothing ever worked to make her feel better was that she was not okay with feeling anything she deemed negative. Her reason for doing various kinds of self-healing processes, including the completion process, was to try to control the way she felt. She realized that her emotions were not inherently good or bad. Those were judgments about the emotions. She noticed that, like the tides, they came and went. She noticed that like the tides, they came and went in response to things she thought or said or did or encountered in the world. Her emotions were simply part of her. She realized that the reason her efforts to feel better didn't work was that... Sorry, let me reread that. She realized that the reason her efforts to feel better didn't work was that doing something with the intention to escape from feeling, because you see feeling as bad as a self-hating mission. She realized that the reason her efforts to feel better didn't work was that doing something with the intention to escape from feeling, because you see feeling as bad as a self-hating mission. Painful emotions become chronic, as in nothing you do ever works to make you feel better. Only if your emotional control switch is flipped on and you resist the emotion you feel. This is the difference between temporary discomfort and long-term suffering. That being said, even though you, like me, have adopted the completion process as a way to feel better, it is my hope that your own process brings you to the point where feeling better is no longer your goal. It is my hope that your new goal becomes to develop a beautifully rich and positive relationship with feeling itself, no matter what emotion it is that you happen to be feeling. Alright, and that is going to conclude Chapter 8, Steps 14 through 18, as well as completing Part 2 of the book. We're going to move on to Part 3 in the next reading. I'm going to do a quick glance and see if we're doing pretty much the same chapter length. Yeah, these are all pretty long, to be very honest. But I think there's probably... Oh, wow, this one is really long. This one is really long. And then I believe there's probably one more chapter after that. And then we're pretty much done. But yeah, this one... I'm probably for sure going to have to split this one into two parts, the upcoming chapter for Part 3. And then I think it's pretty much the ending of the book. So, yeah, I guess stay tuned. I will try to get Part 1 for the next, it's going to be weird to title the video Part 1 and then Part 3, but I guess I could do like 1 out of 2. But I'll try to do the first section of this sometime this week would be nice. And then we'll continue with the second part sometime next week. And then we can just move on into the ending of the book. Definitely a lot to take in there. I think steps 14 through 18, as well as I think the footnotes the most is probably what resonated the most for me. But yeah, definitely go back, give this a listen through if you're actually going through all the steps bit by bit. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the reading. If you did, make sure you drop a like on the video, comment below if you feel the need to do so. Let me know if these steps worked, and or if you're stumped on a specific one. Would love to know how it's going for you guys if you are trying this practice. And if you haven't done so yet, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you can stay up to date on the channel with all the upcoming readings and surely upcoming other content that will be arriving here very soon. But thanks for watching, thanks for listening. You guys take care. I'll see you guys in the next reading. Later.